Before we dive into the story, quick question for you. If you were in Elias Kane's boots, face to face with a predator that terrifies the galaxy but refuses to harm you, would you run, fight, or stand your ground? Drop your answer in the comments, hit like if you'd try to tame it, and don't forget to subscribe for more epic HFY stories. Now let's begin. The chamber of the Galactic Council quivered with tension. Light spilled down from crystalline chandeliers, cold and sharp as the fear that suffused every delegate. Around the crescent table voices clashed, some strained with outrage, others trembling with naked dread. Above them floated a hollow projection, blurred footage of the Predator, the apex stalker, tearing through a regiment on Draxus 4. The image froze on a frame where the beast stood atop a shattered assault mech, blood dripping from its claws, its eyes luminous like molten steel. Even in still form, the projection made the chamber feel smaller. "This thing cannot be allowed to persist," rasped Chancellor Vadron, his carapace trembling despite the iron in his words. "Every day it survives, another colony risks annihilation." Others muttered assent, though more than a few could not lift their gazes to the hollow projection. The apex stalker was no myth. Its hunts had destroyed too many well-armed patrols, too many fortified outposts. Whispers painted it as more than an animal, less than a god, an intelligence that killed not from hunger but from judgment. "We've sent soldiers. We've sent war bands," hissed another delegate, membranous wings shivering. "None return." "The answer," said Councillor Torvek, whose long snout dripped disdain, "is precision. Assassins. Those bred for shadow. They will succeed where armies stumble." A hush followed. No one openly opposed him, though even the word, assassins, tightened throats. To deploy them was to admit the Predator was not prey at all, but an equal. A single claw pressed a console. The hollow projection shifted, revealing 6 figures, shrouded in reactive armor, faces hidden behind visors that warped with adaptive camouflage. The council watched them kneel, silent as statues. "They leave within the hour," Torvek declared. "By this time next cycle, the Predator will be no more." Silence held. Yet under it, unease pooled. None dared speak the fear that every assassin dispatched might only deepen the legend. Across the galaxy, far from the cold fire of the council's chamber, Elias Kane adjusted his rifle strap and exhaled into the quiet of the forest world Jorith Prime. His outpost was a lonely installation, more weathered bunker than base, meant for survey scouts rather than soldiers. He preferred it that way. No commanding officer barking in his ear. No squad to weigh him down. Just the endless forest, ancient and watchful, the way he liked it. The air here was heavy with the perfume of resin and damp soil. Massive trees arched overhead, their trunks broad enough to house entire villages back on Earth. Shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy, painting gold across the undergrowth. To Kane it was peace. To others it would be menace. He crouched near a trail, examining claw marks etched into the bark. 3 deep gouges higher than his chest. He brushed them with a gloved hand, then leaned back, lips tightening. Fresh. Powerful. He had seen marks like this before in other deployments, back when he'd worn Earth's uniform instead of this scout insignia. Wolverines in the taiga, wolves in the Carpathians. Hunters leaving warnings, not decorations. But these grooves were too broad, too deliberate. Not animal, not quite. Something else. His comm crackled with static. A faint voice slipped through, distorted by distance and interference. "Scout Unit J-17 report." Kane let it hiss for a while before thumbing the transmitter. Still breathing. No anomalies worth mentioning. He glanced at the gouges again. Nothing you'd care about. He cut the channel before they could reply. Command didn't need details and Kane preferred silence. Evening bled across the treetops, shadows spilling long and thin. Kane returned to his camp, a modest circle of metal plating and sensor tripods, his rifle always within reach. He cooked a ration pack over a portable burner, the steam rising into the cool night. Somewhere beyond the perimeter, something shifted, a weight brushing through undergrowth too careful to be mere wind. He stilled, hand tightening around the rifle. The sound faded. Not away. Just deeper into the dark. Watching. He didn't sleep much that night. On the far side of the system, the assassins descended. Their ship broke atmosphere without a whisper, its plating bending light around its hull. They moved like ghosts through the forest, their armor shimmering to blend with bark and shadow. Not a word passed between them. Their quarry was near, and silence was their creed. The Predator already knew. From a ridge above, its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting moonlight as it watched the assassins scatter into a hunt formation. Its muscles coiled, not in fear but anticipation. These were not soldiers blundering with rifles. These were killers, cloaked in arrogance and secrecy. For the first time in many cycles, the predator tilted its head, intrigued. Elias Kane woke to silence, not the kind born of peace, but the suffocating stillness of a forest holding its breath. Birds had ceased their calls. Even the wind seemed reluctant to stir. He rose, every instinct sharpened, and shouldered his rifle. He ventured beyond the camp, boots whispering against damp earth. He found signs, scorched patches where propulsion thrusters had kissed the ground, faint impressions of armored feet. He crouched, brushing dirt between his fingers. Whoever landed here knew how to hide. But he'd seen the traces all the same. Years of soldiering taught him how shadows left fingerprints, even when they swore they didn't. Something screamed in the distance. Not human, not animal. A sound like metal shearing against itself, choked off before it could finish. Kane froze. Then he began moving, quiet and low, following the echo. The deeper he went, the clearer the signs. A splintered tree, its trunk clawed open. A patch of blood so dark it seemed black in moonlight. Pieces of armor, no insignia, no markings. Just fragments, torn as though by something with patience and precision. Kane's pulse quickened. He tightened his grip on the rifle but did not raise it. Whatever did this was close. Then he felt it. A weight, not of sound or sight but presence. He turned slowly. At the edge of the clearing, half-shadowed, it stood. Taller than any soldier, its body a lattice of muscle and scar, eyes twin coals burning in the dark. The apex stalker. Every story whispered through the council halls, every nightmare projected across sectors. It was real here, breathing the same air. And it was watching him. Kane kept still, heartbeat a drum in his ears. His rifle hung loose at his side, useless against something that had dismantled armored squads like toys. Yet the predator did not spring. It did not bare its teeth or ready its claws. It simply watched. For a long, unbearable span they regarded one another. Soldier and beast. Man and legend. Kane saw no mindless hunger in those eyes. Only calculation. Recognition. Then, as though some silent verdict had been passed, the predator turned and vanished into the trees without a sound. Kane exhaled, the breath he hadn't realized he was holding clouding in the cool night. He looked at the claw marks carved into the soil where it had stood, marks that ended abruptly as if the beast had chosen to stop short of him deliberately. It had seen him, judged him, and, for reasons he could not yet grasp, spared him. Far above, on the council's orbiting relay, a hidden drone relayed footage of the encounter. In the council chamber, delegates leaned forward, whispers rising. The assassins had vanished, but the predator still lived, and now a human scout stood in its shadow. The council's fear deepened, yet beneath it ran a sharper note, outrage. For the apex stalker had met prey, and chosen to walk away. The decision was made before the echoes of Kane's breath left the clearing. If the predator refused to kill the human, then both would be marked for death. The assassins moved like phantoms beneath the canopy. 6 figures fanned out across the terrain, their armor whispering against leaves, their presence hidden behind cloaks of shifting camouflage. They spoke in clicks and brief hisses, a code designed to vanish into the hum of nocturnal insects. Their blades gleamed faintly whenever moonlight pierced the canopy, weapons that had ended countless lives without a cry escaping. Every motion radiated purpose. They had been promised glory for this hunt, the kind reserved for those who returned from tasks others dared not attempt. But the forest did not yield. It held its silence like a shield, branches thick with shadows that resisted their scanning beams. The assassins spread further apart, confident in their precision, certain that no prey could evade them. Their confidence was the first mistake. On a ridge above them, the predator crouched. Muscles bunched beneath its hide as its eyes tracked the nearest assassin weaving between roots. It did not charge. It waited, studying their patterns, measuring the spaces between them. These were not the lumbering soldiers it had slaughtered before. Their movements carried discipline and malice. But the predator had not lived this long by underestimating hunters. It shifted slightly, claws brushing stone, preparing to teach them the difference between a hunter and what hunted even them. The first scream came abruptly. It tore through the forest and ended just as fast. One assassin vanished, yanked into shadow so violently the others could only catch the blur of motion. They regrouped instantly, blades raised, but when their formation tightened, they realized the body was gone. Only a smear of black blood painted the bark. The second fell moments later, lifted from the ground with such speed that the others slashed at empty air. The forest seemed to pulse with mockery. Their visors swept in every direction, registering nothing but false echoes. Panic prickled beneath their training, a betrayal in their own breaths quickening. Elias Kane stumbled onto the aftermath. He had been following faint trails, curious and uneasy since the night before. The forest floor bore new scars, slashed roots, broken branches, and something far more telling, armor fragments still warm to the touch. He crouched beside one, lifting it under moonlight. The material was advanced, a composite designed for killers who prided themselves on leaving no trace. Yet here it lay torn like fabric. He scanned the Trilene, rifle tight against his chest. The silence pressed heavier than usual, broken only by the distant rustle of something enormous moving without effort. He saw the claw marks again, gouges left purposefully across bark and soil, but this time they told a different story. The marks curved, almost circling a patch of ground as though drawing boundaries. He frowned. It was not random. The night closed in tighter, and then it came, the sharp, high-pitched keening of another assassin, cut off with a wet crunch. Kane whipped his rifle toward the sound, but what he saw froze him where he stood. Between two pillars of bark, he caught the flash of burning eyes. The predator held an assassin suspended with one clawed hand, armor sparking where it had been pierced clean through. The assassin writhed briefly, then went limp. With terrifying ease, the predator tossed the body aside where it landed with a crash. Kane pressed his back to a tree, forcing his breathing to slow. He could run, but every instinct told him it would make him prey. So he stayed steady, watching. The predator moved like shadow-given flesh, circling the surviving assassins who now fought to keep formation. They hissed orders to one another, but their words carried desperation. One loosed a volley of plasma bolts into the dark, scorching trees. None struck. The predator did not roar or taunt. It dismantled them with cold patience. A strike here, a slash there, each calculated to break the unit apart. Kane's soldiers' eye recognized it at once. This was not chaos. It was tactics. By dawn, silence returned to the forest. The assassins lay scattered, broken and bloodied, their advanced weapons useless ornaments in death. Kane approached cautiously, rifle raised though he doubted it mattered. He examined one of the fallen, noting how precise the wounds were. Nothing wasted, no flurry of rage. Just efficiency. Then he felt it. That same weight from the night before. He turned slowly. The predator stood a short distance away, half in shadow, half in pale light. Its chest rose and fell steadily, its claws still slick with alien blood. It was close enough now for Kane to see details. The scars etched across its hide, the faint ridges along its arms, the intelligence burning in its eyes. Kane kept his weapon lowered. Shooting would mean instant death. He knew it. But the predator made no move to close the distance. Instead, it regarded him with unnerving focus, tilting its head slightly as though considering. The assassins had been wiped out, yet Kane lived. The predator had passed close to his camp, close enough to kill, yet it hadn't. Now it stood here almost waiting. Kane's pulse thudded in his ears. He thought of wolves back on Earth, of how they watched before choosing whether a stranger was threat or kin. Without understanding why, Kane lowered the rifle further, until the barrel angled toward the ground. The predator's gaze followed the motion. Its claws flexed but not toward him. They held that silent exchange longer than felt possible. Kane, a lone scout who had no place in the Council's grand designs. The predator, a nightmare born of alien fear. Yet here in this clearing neither struck. Then without a sound the predator turned away. It vanished into the foliage, its massive form dissolving into shadow. Only the crushed remnants of the assassins remained, mute testimony to its power. Kane stood frozen long after it left. His rifle weighed heavy but not from fear alone. Something had shifted. The predator had spared him twice. Once could be chance. Twice was choice. Far above, hidden drones recorded every second. On the Galactic Council's viewing decks, delegates stared at the feed, aghast. The assassins were gone. Their finest killers shredded, their investment reduced to wreckage. And yet the predator lived. Worse, it had stood before a human scout and not struck him down. The chamber erupted with voices, some shrill with panic, others boiling with fury. Screens replayed Kane's still figure, rifle lowered, the predator's eyes meeting his. Whispers crawled like insects. Had the predator chosen the human? Had it found something in him worth sparing? One counselor slammed a clawed hand onto the table, silencing the noise. Enough, he hissed. This ends now. If the beast will not kill the human, then both must die. Together. The decree rippled outward, a sentence carried on the wires of bureaucracy and vengeance. Orders were already forming, fleets aligning, troops sharpening blades. In the forest, Cain remained unaware of the verdict passed above the stars. He only knew that the air felt heavier now, as though the trees themselves held their breath, watching what would come next. And in the distance, eyes still burned with molten fire, following his every step. Cain woke to the scent of smoke and iron in the air. His campfire had burned low, leaving only smoldering embers, but something else lingered, musky, sharp, carried on the breeze. He rose silently, rifle in hand, senses taut as bowstring. The forest beyond the perimeter felt heavier, not empty but occupied. Then he saw it. A carcass lay near the edge of his camp, freshly killed. The creature resembled a tusked boar, its hide thick enough to turn aside most blades. Yet its throat had been opened cleanly, no wasted effort, no sign of struggle. The predator had dragged it here. The blood trail told the story, broad tracks circling, careful not to trip sensors. It had placed the kill deliberately within his reach. Cain's grip tightened on his rifle. The message was unmistakable. The apex stalker, scourge of warbands and assassins alike, had delivered him food. Not prey. Not a threat. An offering. His mind reached back, unbidden, to a night in the Carpathian Mountains years ago. Wolves had circled his unit's bivouac, yellow eyes glowing from the dark. Young recruits had trembled, fingers tight on triggers, but he had whispered caution. He remembered standing calm, heart steady, until one wolf approached and left a carcass at the edge of the firelight. A gesture as old as instincts themselves. Pack choosing whether to extend its circle. Cain exhaled. He lowered the rifle and crouched beside the carcass. With practiced hands he cleaned the beast, carving meat with a soldier's efficiency. All the while he felt eyes on him. He did not turn until the meal was roasting over the fire. There it was, half shrouded by trees, massive frame blending with shadows. Eyes like molten steel fixed on him, unblinking. Cain raised a strip of roasted flesh slowly, then set it down across the fire. He stepped back, palms open, showing he held no weapon. The predator moved with liquid grace, silent for something so large. It padded forward, claws sinking lightly into soil, every movement deliberate. It stopped on the far side of the fire, its gaze flicking from Cain to the meat. Slowly, it lowered its head and took the offering. Cain held still, every muscle tense, but the predator did not lunge. It ate with brutal efficiency, yet not frenzied hunger. When it finished, it lifted its gaze again, firelight dancing across scarred hide. Then, astonishingly, it lowered itself to the ground, folding limbs beneath its frame. A posture not of attack but of rest. Something shifted in Cain's chest, subtle but undeniable. The apex stalker had destroyed assassins engineered for death, but here it lay, calm within reach of his rifle. He realized it could have ended him 10 times already, yet it had chosen this. The night deepened. Cain watched the predator's steady breathing, the faint ripple of its chest. He slept in fragments, but every time he woke, the beast was still there, a silent sentinel at the edge of firelight. At dawn, he tended his gear, patching torn straps and checking rifle sights. The predator rose with him, stretching like a great cat. It paced the clearing, never straying far. When Cain shouldered his pack and set out to survey terrain, the predator followed. Always a few paces back, sometimes slipping into cover, sometimes plainly visible. By midday the truth had crystallized. He was no longer moving alone. The predator had chosen to shadow him, not as quarry but as something else. Perhaps companion. Perhaps pack. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Cain tested the bond in small ways. When he paused to drink from a stream, the predator crouched nearby, watching the trees. When he raised his rifle at a strange rustling, the predator circled ahead, vanishing into undergrowth before returning with silence in its wake. It was not tame. It was not domesticated. It was choosing. Every step. Far above the forest, the council seethed. Drone footage streamed back to the chamber, capturing the human and the predator moving together. Delegates watched with widening eyes, horror carving their expressions. For cycles they had painted this beast as mindless death, yet here it was, following a man, obeying unspoken rhythms of trust. This cannot be allowed, Chancellor Vadran rasped, mandibles clattering. It has allied with him. With a human. Ally? Another spat. Do you not see? It kneels to him. The chamber erupted. Outrage clashed with fear, voices rising until Councillor Torvek slammed a claw against the table. Enough. If the beast cannot be slain alone, then we strike both. Deploy fleets. Burn the forest world to ash. The council will not tremble before an animal and an earth-born vagabond. Orders rippled outward with ruthless efficiency. In the dark between stars, warships stirred, their engines igniting with cold fire. Back on Jorith Prime, Kane felt the unease before he saw the evidence. His comm crackled with static, strange signals bleeding into frequencies. The Predator froze mid-step, ears tilting, nostrils flaring. Together they turned skyward as distant streaks of light traced across the heavens. Dropships. Troop carriers. Not subtle this time. Kane's jaw tightened. Whatever game had been unfolding between him and the Predator was about to end, or transform into something harsher. He glanced at the beast. Its eyes locked with his molten depths steady as if sensing the storm to come. For the first time Kane spoke aloud, voice low and firm. "Looks like they're here for both of us." The Predator did not answer with sound, but with motion. It stepped closer, lowering its head slightly in a gesture Kane recognized from wolves long ago. Not submission. A pact. Kane's grip tightened on his rifle. He felt the weight of the moment settle into his bones. Alone he was a scout against an empire. With the Predator he was something else, something the Council had not prepared for. The sky thundered as engines broke atmosphere, leaves shuddering in the downdraft. Kane and the Predator stood side by side, shadows cast long across the forest floor. For the first time, Elias Kane allowed himself a grim smile. The Council wanted a hunt. They were about to learn what it meant to be hunted. The first dropships came down like iron rain, their hulls cutting through the canopy and showering splinters across the forest. Engines roared, drowning the cries of beasts fleeing deeper into the undergrowth. Elias Kane pressed against the trunk of a colossal tree, rifle steady, breath measured. Beside him, the Predator crouched low, its muscles coiled, eyes reflecting the inferno of descending fire. Neither flinched at the violence overhead. They were waiting. Armored soldiers spilled from the crafts, disciplined, not like the assassins who had thought shadows were theirs alone. These carried heavy rifles and exoframes that boosted their movements, forming perimeter lines as soon as boots struck soil. Kane recognized the precision. He had trained men like them back on Earth. He also knew the cracks in such formations, the spaces where fear could creep in when the enemy struck from places they could not see. The Predator understood too. It melted into the dark before Kane moved, its bulk impossible to track once shadows swallowed it. A strangled cry followed moments later, one soldier yanked upward into the canopy. The line faltered, heads jerking upward, weapons flashing. Kane slipped along their flank, sights aligned, and sent two clean shots into exposed joints where armor flexed. The bodies fell before the others realized they were under attack from two sides. Chaos unfurled. Soldiers barked orders, trying to tighten formation, but every attempt only gave the Predator more angles. It darted from shadows like a phantom, claws scything through armor, jaws crushing helmets. Kane moved with equal precision, using their panic to strike from cover, bullets cracking skulls, grenades scattering squads. Together they carved through the Council's finest like a blade through cloth. And yet, numbers pressed harder. Dropship after dropship disgorged troops, filling the forest with the metallic thud of boots. Kane ducked behind shattered bark, sweat slick across his neck. He ejected a spent magazine and slid in another with mechanical calm. The Predator returned to his side, blood glistening on its claws, breath heavy but steady. Its presence alone steadied him. He glanced at it, eyes locking with molten fire. "They'll keep coming," he murmured, "until one of us is ash." The Predator gave no sound, only a low rumble in its chest, neither anger nor fear but something Kane understood instinctively. It was not retreating. Not now, not ever. Above them, a Council broadcast cut across the frequencies. The voice was cold, amplified, meant to smother with authority. "Elias Kane. Human interloper. Predator. Your defiance is noted. Surrender and your deaths will be swift. Resist and your world will burn." Kane laughed once, humorless, shaking his head. He pressed his comms, broadcasting across the open channel. "You've already tried burning armies and assassins. Didn't work. Now you're scared because it picked me. And you should be." The reply was silence, but he imagined the counselors squirming in their seats, their fear curdling into rage. The Predator tilted its head at his voice, the faintest growl escaping as though echoing his defiance. The next wave struck harder. Artillery rained from orbit, pounding the forest, ripping craters through ancient trees. Kane and the Predator sprinted through smoke and falling embers, diving into a network of caves beneath the ridgeline. The tunnels stank of minerals and stale air, their walls jagged with stone, but they offered cover from the eyes above. Soldiers pursued, their lights slicing through the dark, beams bouncing across stone. Kane took position at a choke point, rifle braced against rock. The predator vanished deeper, its growls reverberating faintly through stone until screams replaced them. Troops staggered back in panic, some firing wildly, their beams catching nothing but shadows before claws pulled them down. Kane picked off stragglers, every shot punctuating the predator's hunt. Bodies piled in silence. The surviving soldiers retreated, their lines broken, fear heavy in their steps. Kane reloaded calmly, the rhythm grounding him. His heart thundered, but not with panic, with something sharper, cleaner. For the first time since he'd left Earth, he felt purpose flood his veins. Not the lonely routine of a scout, not the sterile missions of the Council. This was survival bound to another will as wild and resolute as his own. When the last echoes of boots faded, the predator reappeared, dragging a corpse before dropping it at Kane's feet. Its hide was scarred, new wounds leaking dark ichor, yet its stance remained tall, unbroken. Kane crouched, studying the injuries, resisting the impulse to reach out. The beast's eyes glinted, unblinking. Then, with deliberate slowness, it lowered itself beside him, chest heaving, head bowed near his shoulder. Kane let out a long breath. He understood the gesture. Not weakness but trust. He reached cautiously, hand brushing across rough hide, and felt the predator still under his touch. The connection sealed something wordless between them. He wasn't just fighting beside it. He was part of its choice. The calm crackled again, the Council's voice colder than before. You cannot hide in tunnels forever, human. The fleet prepares orbital cleansing. Forest, stone, predator and man alike, reduced to nothing. Kane smiled grimly, fingers tightening on his rifle. He imagined the predator's claws flexing with the same anticipation. Let them burn the sky. He had survived worse, and now he was no longer alone. The ground trembled as bombardments began, shaking dirt loose from the cavern ceiling. Stone groaned overhead, dust raining onto his shoulders. Kane glanced at the predator, who met his eyes unflinching. Together, they braced for the storm above, shadows and fire converging on a world that refused to bow. Outside, the forest cracked under fire, but in the dark of the mountain tunnels, man and predator crouched side by side, not broken but sharpened. The Council thought to corner them. Instead, they had forced them into the one place where unity forged unbreakable steel. And as the bombardment raged, Kane whispered into the calm voice, steady, aimed at every trembling counselor beyond the stars. If you want us, come down here. We'll be waiting. The tunnels shook with each distant blast, a dull roar that rolled through stone like a living heartbeat. Elias Kane pressed his back against the wall, dust clinging to sweat across his face. His rifle lay across his knees, but it was not the weapon that steadied him, it was the predator crouched close, its breathing deep and even, its vast shoulders rising and falling with measured calm. In the flicker of his dim light, its eyes caught fire, ancient and unblinking. For hours they had endured bombardments. The Council wanted the forest erased, wanted Kane and the beast crushed under tons of collapsing stone. Yet the mountain held, and so did they. In the silence between tremors, Kane studied the creature's wounds, deep rents along its flank, scars already stiffening, its blood a dark sheen across thick hide. He had seen soldiers falter under half the punishment, but this predator endured without complaint, anchored by something fierce and immovable. He leaned closer, voice low. You're not just surviving, are you? You're waiting. Like me. The predator tilted its massive head, a low rumble vibrating through its chest, not threat but answer. Kane's chest tightened. He had fought alone so long that the concept of waiting with another, for another, was foreign. Yet here, in the hollow belly of the mountain, he felt it as real as the rifle in his hands. Then the silence broke. A grinding hiss of machinery echoed through the tunnels. Kane's jaw clenched. The Council had sent more than soldiers. He could hear the cadence of powered exosuits, heavy steps reverberating like drums of war. This was not a sweep, it was an extermination. He rose, slinging his rifle, and the predator stood with him, towering, wounded yet unbent. We'll have to split them, Kane whispered. Draw their fire, break their line. Otherwise we're boxed in. The predator's eyes narrowed as if it understood the strategy. It padded into shadow, vanishing as though the dark itself had swallowed it whole. Kane pressed forward, rifle raised, pulse steady. The first armored trooper emerged from the tunnel glow, faceless helm sweeping the dark. Behind him, 3 more, each encased in gleaming exosteel, their rifles humming with lethal charge. Kane fired before the lead could speak, a bullet punching through a joint seam. The trooper dropped, sparks fizzling from his suit. The others returned fire, plasma bolts scorching stone, but Kane was already moving, darting between jagged walls, his shots precise, relentless. A shriek tore the air, deep, primal. The predator launched from above, crushing a trooper beneath its weight, claws tearing armor like foil. Panic broke discipline. Kane exploited it, cutting down another with cold efficiency. The tunnel became chaos, bolts lighting shadows, steel clashing with claw, gunfire echoing like thunder. But the enemy did not retreat. More poured in, relentless, their numbers a tide threatening to drown them both. Kane's rifle clicked empty. He drew his sidearm, teeth gritted, every shot a refusal to yield. The predator fought like a storm, yet blood ran heavier down its side, each movement costing more. Then came the voice again, resonating through comms, cruel and calculating. Elias Kane. Your defiance impresses even us. But you cannot win. The beast will bleed. And you, human, will die with it. Kane snarled into the comm, firing another round that dropped a trooper. You still don't get it? You sent armies, assassins, hunters. You think this thing fights because of you? No. It chose me. And I chose it. The predator roared at his words, a sound that rattled stone, primal and furious. For a moment, even armored soldiers faltered, their formation breaking under the weight of it. Kane surged forward, seizing the crack, moving like a man possessed. He tackled one trooper, drove his blade into the joint at the neck, then ripped the rifle free and turned it on the rest. Bolts seared through helmets, scattering them like leaves in a storm. The predator barreled through the survivors, blood and steel spraying in its wake. Together, man and beast carved a path through what was meant to be their grave. But the climax came when the tunnel ceiling split with a deafening crack. A final bombardment had struck true. The mountain groaned, boulders cascading, dust choking the air. Soldiers scrambled to flee, but Kane and the predator stood firm, pressed shoulder to shoulder. Stones crashed around them, yet the beast shielded him with its body, massive frame deflecting rubble, claws digging into earth to hold steady. When the tremors ceased, silence fell heavy. The enemy lay broken, buried under stone and shadow. Kane coughed through dust, pushing himself upright. The predator rose beside him, battered, bloodied, but alive. Their eyes met in the darkness, two survivors bound by more than chance. Kane exhaled, a sharp laugh escaping despite the weight of smoke. They'll send more. They'll never stop. The predator lowered its head, brushing its massive skull against his shoulder in a gesture Kane now understood with bone-deep certainty. Not surrender. Not exhaustion. A vow. He tightened his grip on the stolen rifle, straightened his spine. Then let them come. We'll make them regret ever stepping foot on this world. And for the first time, the predator loosed a sound unlike any before, not a roar of fury, but a call that resonated through the stone, low and resonant, almost like agreement. In the dark tunnels, among ruins and corpses, Elias Kane and the apex predator stood together, a pact sealed not in words but in blood and survival. The council thought it had cornered prey. Instead, it had awakened a partnership that would tear their fleets apart. Above, the sky still burned with warships, but below, in the heart of the mountain, a soldier and a beast waited, not as hunted but as hunters. The war was no longer theirs alone. It had only just begun.